in front of you when you do your homework, just so you can copy it, basically. Okay, so let's talk difference quotients for a bit. How'd it go last night with the difference quotient? You guys felt good about them all? Any that you got hung up on?
Yeah. I think it was the 20.
Was it like 1 over 2x?
I'm mostly not sure. I just remember.
1 over a minus h minus
Oh!
a over h.
Oh yeah, that one wasn't even a difference quotient. But we could do it. It looks a lot like a difference quotient. It was 1 over a minus h minus 1 over a all over h. Yeah? So remember that whole idea of putting the numerator and denominator in parentheses if there's addition or subtraction. So we see now that we have two different factors, right? There's a factor of a in the fraction on the right and a factor of a minus h in the fraction on the left. There's nothing you can multiply a by to get a minus h, right? So we have to just use those as two separate factors. That means when I get common denominators, this first fraction is going to be multiplied by a over a, and the second fraction is going to be multiplied by a minus h over a minus h. And then it's all over h. And then probably one of the most common errors on these, and also the difference quotients, is not distributing the negative. So I have parentheses around that a minus h right now, and I'm going to keep the parentheses there until I know for sure that I don't need them. So we have a minus h. If you really like it, you can put the 1 there. And then that's over a times a minus h. Can I cancel that a minus h? No, because there is subtraction between the a and the a minus h, not multiplication. Very good. So I have to distribute that negative before I can drop my parentheses. So I have a minus a, which is 0. And then that's a positive h because that negative distributes. So we end up with h over a times a minus h over h. So what am I dividing h over a minus h by? I mean, over a times a minus h by. What am I dividing by here? Good. And so that's the same as multiplying
You have to show your division
by
step.
1 over h.
Can you just go straight to 1?
Sure, just don't screw it up.
Okay.
So, I mean, the thing about, like, not showing work is that I can't give you any partial credit if you don't show any work. So, like, it comes up a lot with the factoring problems because some people factor in their head and they do it really, really well. And that's totally fine with me. But, like, if you don't show any work for factoring, then it's like all or nothing. So you just got to make sure you're really confident about it if you're not going to show any work. I think that this is an important step to show because a lot of people, like, flip it too many times. Like, they'll end up multiplying by h over 1 because they're thinking that they're flipping 1 over h, like, kind of like go around in circles and end up with it upside down. But if you're confident that you're getting it right, then you don't have to show it. But, like, if there's 3 points between there and there, and you don't show any intermediate steps, then you either get all 3 or you don't get all 3. So everything you show me is just an opportunity for me to give you more credit if it's not perfect. So my h's will cancel. And we get 1 over a times a minus h. That worked out pretty nicely. Kenny, what do you think?
What?
What do you think?
I think I got h squared.
Ooh, I bet you multiplied by h over 1.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want us to leave it as like 1 over 8?
Yeah, you never have to distribute.
Okay.
The only time we distribute is like something like this, because that's not in factored form. If it's in factored form, then we just leave it in factored form because that's the form we wanted in order to simplify. Okay, let's do a difference quotient together, and then I'm going to have you guys do a couple. We're going to find f of x plus h minus f of x over h for f of x equals 3x minus x squared plus 5. 5. There it is. So as soon as you feel comfortable putting it like putting it all in the big fraction right away, that's totally fine. I think a lot of people think it's helpful to like find f of x plus h first and then plug it all in. So I'm going to do it that way, but as soon as you feel comfortable just putting it all in the big fraction, you can do that. So I'm going to find f of x plus h. So there's 2 errors in these problems that are really, really common that you want to watch out for. The first one is adding h at the end instead of making it part of your input, right? Like people will say f of x plus h equals 3x minus x squared plus 5 plus h. And that's doing this. It's just taking what f of x is and then adding h to the output of f of x. What we want to do is actually plug x plus h in as the input. So if you find yourself getting tripped up on that, one thing you can do is just rewrite it exactly as it is in f of x. And then like put parentheses around each of your x's. And then inside each of those parentheses, you want to put whatever is inside these parentheses. So x plus h, I'm sorry, I smushed it in here, but I'll write it nicer in a sec. And x plus h. So notice that what's in these parentheses always matches what's in the formula on the right side. So if I have x plus h in the parentheses, each of these has to be an x plus h. So here, let me write it nicer so it's not all squished. What, f of x?
Yeah.
No, because I'm not factoring it. So f of x plus h is 3 times x plus h minus x plus h squared plus 5. And so now I know what f of x plus h is, and I know what f of x is, so I'm ready to put that into my difference quotient. I would like for you to write f of x plus h minus f of x over h one time. You don't have to write it in every single step, but you need to write it at the beginning of each problem when you do the difference quotient. And the way I usually do it is I write that expression and then an equal sign, and then I do all my work just down the right side so that I know that everything I'm doing is equal to f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So we're going to replace f of x plus h with what f of x plus h is equal to. So the whole right side of that is 3 times x plus h minus x plus h squared plus 5. And then I want to subtract f of x. I have to erase this. Is that okay? I went and like pinned myself into a corner. But you guys got that part, right? Okay. So now I have to subtract f of x. This is the second place where there's a common error, and that error is not putting your f of x in parentheses. If I'm subtracting f of x, I have to subtract all of f of x. If I don't put it in parentheses, I'm only subtracting the first term. So 3x minus x squared plus 5. And then this is all over h. And from there, we're going to simplify. So we'll distribute our 3. We get 3x plus 3h minus, and we have to multiply x plus h times x plus h. This is something that you'll end up memorizing because you do it a bunch of times over and over again. But x plus h times x plus h is equal to x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Notice that I kept that in parentheses, and the reason is that I have a negative sign in front of that expression or that term that I haven't done anything with yet. And so I can't do this because I haven't taken care of that negative. And then I can distribute the negative over here. Minus 3x plus x squared minus 5. Questions so far? So then I'm going to distribute that negative to get rid of that last set of parentheses. When you distribute a negative, make sure that you get rid of the parentheses. On the homework, I saw a couple places where people distributed their negative and like kept it in parentheses, and that almost always ends up with like some multiplication that you didn't intend. Like in this case, it looks like it's 5 times that whole thing, but it's really just 5 minus 3x. So you just want to be careful that when you actually distribute the negative or whatever numbers in front of the parentheses, you drop the parentheses because you don't need them anymore. And that keeps your operation straight. So we have 3x plus 3h minus x squared minus 2xh minus h squared plus 5 minus 3x minus x squared minus 5.
Wouldn't that be plus x squared?
All over 8, yes. Thank you. So this step is the first chance you get to make sure that you didn't make one of those mistakes that I was telling you about with not using parentheses or plugging in the x plus h wrong. So at this point, once you've gotten rid of all your parentheses in the numerator, when you're ready to combine like terms, every single term that doesn't have an h in it should zero out. And if it doesn't, it almost always means you forgot to put f of x in parentheses. And so your signs are wrong on some of your terms. Because like 3x minus 3x is 0. negative x squared plus x squared is 0, and then positive 5 minus 5 is 0. And if you forgot your parentheses on your or your f of x, one of those, well, in this case, two of those signs would be wrong. And so you get like 5 plus 5, and you get 10, and all of a sudden you have a term that doesn't have an h in it. So this is one place you kind of want to stop for a minute and be like, okay, is what I know should happen actually happening? And if not, go back up and make sure you got those parentheses. So we've got 3h minus 2xh minus h squared. And every single term has an h in it, which is what we want. All over h. And then can I like cancel out that h? Why not? Right, well, there's multiplication between the 3 and the h, but there's like subtraction up in the numerator, right? It's not all multiplication. So in order to cancel an h, I have to factor an h out of the entire numerator, so the whole thing. So we have h times 3 minus 2x minus h over h. And now I can cancel that because the entire numerator is h times something else. And, oh, I got room down there. So we end up with 3 minus 2x minus h. So the two big things to look for, at least for every single problem that we'll do in this class, I mean for almost all functions, there's a few weirdos, but you won't see them for a while. In this step, all the terms that don't have h are going to cancel out. And then this step, you should be able to factor out an h and cancel it. If one of those doesn't happen, that's a clue that you made an error. So we're always going to be able to cancel an h, and all the terms without the h are always going to zero out when we combine like terms. Has anybody been getting 1? Oh, excellent, good. If you get 1 for all your difference quotients, then you're making the mistake that we talked about at the beginning where you're doing f of x and then adding h on the end instead of actually plugging x plus h in for your input. But if nobody's getting it, then we don't need to worry about it. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a couple to work on. I can answer questions as they come up. Any questions on this one before we... Good stuff? So find f of x plus h minus f of x over h for f of x equals 4x minus 3x squared plus 2 and f of x 1 over, no, let's mix it up, let's make it a 5 over 6x. Separately, like those are two separate problems, so you don't have to try to put them together. Minus 5 Okay. What should we do first? Mm-hmm. What should I multiply 3 over x by?
2.
Yeah, just 2 over 2. We don't need another factor of x, right? And then plus 1 over 2x. That gives them common denominators, so it's totally fine not to multiply that second fraction by anything. It's already got the denominator we want. And then what about in the bottom? So let's take it one term at a time. I have 1 over 4x, which I'm going to multiply by x plus 1 over x plus 1. Good. And then 5 over x plus 1. What do I need there? So 4x over 4x. So we've got, let's see, on the top we have 6 plus 1. So that's 7 over 2x over x plus 1. I can drop those parentheses because the only thing to distribute is a positive 1. There's no negative sign I have to worry about. And then minus 20x over 4x times x plus 1. And so now we're dividing. So 7 over 2x divided by negative 19x plus 1 over 4x times x plus 1. Notice we don't go to the division step until we have a single fraction on the top and a single fraction on the bottom. And so 7 over 2x times the reciprocal, so 4x times x plus 1 over negative 19x plus 1. Can I cancel anything?
Can you take 2x away from 4x?
So you can't take 2x away from it because we don't want to subtract. But, like, remember that those are two separate factors. Like, I have a factor of 4 and a factor of x on the top, and I have a factor of 2 and a factor of x on the bottom. So the x's cancel. And then now it's really just like 4 divided by 2. I mean, you can write the 4 as 2 times 2 if you want to see it, but a factor of 2 will cancel. And so then we end up with 14 times x plus 1 over negative 19x plus 1. And I don't distribute anything, but if I have two like coefficients like that, like the 7 and 2, I'd go ahead and multiply those just because it's a little bit more concise. But then after that, you can leave it in that form. So tonight you have no online homework unless you didn't finish last